again, I would first like to thank our honored guests. We have both Lexi Lawson, who plays Hamilton's wife, Eliza, and also Brandon Victor Dixon, who plays Aaron Burr. It's a special treat and an honor for us as Hamilton, who share in Hamilton's legacy, to have you both here. Thank you very much. And I'd also like to thank the Trinity Church. Thank you very much for allowing us to hold this ceremony today and supporting us in this effort. Thank you. And thank you all for joining us for this special occasion to honor a very great man who's driven both our nation and our service as the U.S. Coast Guard. So we're all part of the Coast Guard cutter Hamilton, who's here for Fleet Week, and there's no place that welcomes the fleet better than New York City. And it's been a very gracious welcome and a great opportunity for us to visit many different places in New York, including holding this ceremony today. Our ship is a 418-foot ship, and it's a multi-mission ship, but it's very much the product of the thought and the ideas of Alexander Hamilton, as he opined in the Federalist Papers and then became Secretary of Treasury to make the U.S. Coast Guard. So with this ship, we've inherited a legacy of service, and every day myself and my officers have to walk by a portrait of Alexander Hamilton, and we always ensure that we're living up to what he would expect of a service he created. As many of you know, Alexander Hamilton was born in the West Indies, and he was, as a very young man, involved in creating in the merchant trade as a young clerk. And in doing so, he was exposed to the importance of being able to have free trade lanes and to be able to do all the things in the maritime industry that are needed for a strong nation. He then became, as he came up to New York City, he then became aide-de-camp at George Washington, and he in fact led the storm of Redoubt 9 and 10 in Yorktown that enabled us to win the Revolutionary War. And it was those strong ties that later made the president realize that he would become a very strong Secretary of the Treasury. While he was here in New York preparing for that role, he also created the banking system. He worked to create our political party. He was instrumental in many other political and financial things for our nation. But for the Coast Guard in particular, it was those remarks that he made in the Federalist Papers, and then he enacted when he became the Secretary of Treasury under George Washington to create then the Revenue Cutter Service. And then later, he worked on the very details of our first ships, our first 10 ships. He made very exact specifications. He said that they should not exceed more than $1,000 per ship. We're a little bit beyond that nowadays. But he also worked with George Washington to hand select the first officers of the Revenue Cutter Service, and commissioning Hoppy Eaton, the first officer who now lays to rest up at the Coast Guard Academy in London, Connecticut. And in fact, today, the letter from Alexander Hamilton reminding all boarding officers of the U.S. Revenue Cutter Service that all Americans are free men and must be treated as free men. It was a letter that we still read in our law enforcement school when we were taught to be boarding officers for the U.S. Coast Guard. There's a broad heritage and there's a broad legacy from Alexander Hamilton that I find here visiting in New York. It's amazing, the tentacles through the city and through the nation. One of the great prides we have is to be associated with such a successful musical, and to see another legacy of Hamilton come to life. It's just amazing. And there's no one, the only disappointment with this ceremony is that my 10-year-old daughter could not be here to meet both of you. She would be beside herself right now. It's a real honor to have you here to honor Alexander Hamilton. Thank you very much. And so again, thank you very much for being here for this special occasion, and we'll continue with the ceremony. Thank you.
before we proceed any further, I just remind the audience to remain standing as Mother Miles leads us in our opening prayer.
Let us pray. Almighty and everlasting God, whose power stills the tumult of the deep, we offer our gratitude for the life and inspiration of Alexander Hamilton, and for this legacy of the Coast Guard that protects and serves us. We offer our prayers for those who serve and have served in our Coast Guard and in all military. We are mindful of traditions of selfless service to seafarers who make their ways to appointed ports, mark their soundings and make them sure that safe passages may be found. Encourage them, O Lord, as they stand guard over coasts and bulwarks of our freedoms. Bless the keepers of the light and be their close friend in lonely watches. Keep the beacons of honor and duty burning, that they may reach the home port with duty well performed in service to you in our land. Amen. And we now bless all these lives of service, that the beautiful expression of tentacles of freedom in this city that go down deep and spread all and bless us all, our actors, all of our lives here, all of us as we give service. And I'm going to bless especially our Coast Guard for protection. This is for all, blessing all of us, that we can live up to this legacy of freedom and of service.
Now, please stand and direct your attention to the Coast Guard silent drill team at my left. We're going to present the ceremonial wreath for display. Now, Commanding Officer of Coast Guard Cutter Hamilton and the cast members of the Broadway musical Hamilton will lay a remembrance wreath in memory of Alexander Hamilton, founding father of the United States Coast Guard.
The wreath before you represents a commitment to the United States Coast Guard and our honored guests to remembering our founding father. We also want these remembrance wreaths to symbolize our honor to those who have served and are serving in the armed forces of our great nation, and to their families who endure sacrifices every day on our behalf. To our children, we want you to understand the freedoms you enjoy today have not been free, but come with a cost that someday you may have to pay yourself. As a nation standing together, we can defeat hatred and injustice. Thanks to our veterans, we have the freedom to do just that.
Thank you very much, Captain Clendenin. Please rise as Mother Miles leads us in the closing prayer. I understand Mother Miles has a conflicting engagement, so we'll proceed. And Ms. Lexi Lawson, we would be very honored if you could speak a few words in remembrance of this occasion.
Brandon and I are very grateful to be here. Thank you for having us. On behalf of the cast of Hamilton, the American musical, we are honored to be telling the story of Alexander Hamilton night after night, and so grateful that we can continue on with sharing his legacy. So again, thank you for having us.
I want to thank everyone for their attendance today. We greatly appreciate your presence on this just wonderful occasion. As a reminder, our ship and other ships are available for public tours at the Manhattan cruise ship terminals from Pier 86 up to Pier 92, where you'll find the Coast Guard cutter Hamilton. Thank you for your attendance today, and have a very blessed day.